Yes! Welcome into Sports Pit. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy, weekend preview edition. We'll hit the Sunday night game, the game in London. Huge game with the Raiders and the Broncos, and also the Steelers and Ravens. All that coming up on Big Game Breakdown. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. You won't believe all the Trump props in a second. Thursday night football. Not good for the shops, Packers and the over. So the public trying to get some of their money back, so they start 2-0 with their parlay, and their 5 and 6 teamers. They're already 2-0 to start out their tickets as Green Bay gets the cash. Went up to 7.5 in some spots in Vegas. Ugly game. I say it's time to put Trubisky in there for the Bears next Monday night against the Vikings at home.
You know, and I mean, from a betting perspective, really not much of a story last night. Exactly what you'd expect. The pros bet Chicago and under. The Joes bet Green Bay and over. The Joes cashed both sides of that. And that's not an unusual proposition for who's betting what when it comes to the single event national TV game. Chicago melted down pretty hard last night. Mike Glennon, for the third time in 4 games, Glennon turned the ball over 3.5 times. I understand the desire to get Trubisky into the mix as quickly as possible, but Mike Glennon is not the only problem Chicago has. And the one thing you don't want to do is take a young quarterback and put him into a bad situation with no receivers and then watch him get beat up a little bit. So I'm not convinced that it's the right move to insert Trubisky into the starting lineup moving forward.
It's time for the Polish Hammer. We want Mitchell in there. Something to follow. The Bears, terrific at home so far, and 2 no-shows on the road. That's something to watch. Also, how about this? Iowa State loses that offense we were talking about that had been so good, couldn't move the ball against Texas. Herman has turned things around already since the week 1 loss to Maryland, a 17-7 final, and the total was 61 at Bet Online.
Yeah, Iowa State took a little bit of money. There was two-way action at the closing number of -5 for Texas. The under took money there. That was the right side in that ball game. I got bet down as low as 61 at Bet Online, and the under never in doubt. The side in doubt right up until the final drive of the game.
Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. How about some bad bets? Pirates open plus $1.40, down to plus 110. No Harper, so they reacted to the lineup there with the Nationals. Also a tough push of the total of 9. It was 4-2 in the 9th. The Nationals blew it, and then they won it in the bottom of the 9th, 5-4 final.
Yeah, I mean, look, the markets have been wrong about the Washington Nationals all week. We've seen the money come the wrong way on Nats game. So Bryce Harper didn't make his return last night, so boom, the money pours in on Pittsburgh. That triggered the move. It looks like Harper is expected to play over the course of the weekend to try to get his timing back, and we can anticipate more moves with the Washington Nationals over the course of the weekend, as the bettors have gotten Washington wrong all week.
This was a horrible line. Bad for the books. Indians open $2, bet up to $2.70. I'm surprised it didn't go higher because this was the hangover game where the Twins were celebrating all night because they clinched a spot in the playoffs. And there were some Twins who didn't get to the ballpark until half an hour before the game started. Carrasco and the Indians get the win. The markets love Carrasco. Indians win 5-2. Twins with a couple runs and 2 outs in the 9th.
Yeah, I mean, you can count on the markets betting against whatever team clinched the previous night. Players are human beings. Players go out and celebrate. And for a team like Minnesota that lost 100 games last year, it's a big deal to make the postseason. No surprise that the Twins were no-shows last night. As you mentioned, it was a bad number. Cleveland started at -$2. I'm not shocked. I am shocked it didn't go higher because it was Carrasco on the mound for the Tribe. We've been telling you all season how much the Sharps like Carlos Carrasco, and the Indians in the regular season 24-8 in Carlos Carrasco starts.
There's another one. Marlins open $1.05, close $1.35. This is bad for the books. They won and stand at 2 more home runs. Good job, Tony Miller. You put up that prop a while back. 61.5 total home runs. He's at 59 with 3 to play.
Yeah, I mean, the Marlins are bringing some spark to the table, and the betting market saw it. This closing stretch has been impressive. And Giancarlo Stanton, what do we say? I mean, this has truly been a remarkable. When you think about the hype that the other guys chasing 60 got and the hype that Stanton's gotten, I mean, it's not even close. The fact that Miami's out of the race has been negative, but certainly the markets got this one right last night, No surprise we see continued Miami Marlins money over the course of the weekend.
This made 0 sense, this bet. 0. And it won. Cubs opened as high as plus $1.80, closed as low as a plus $1.25. Also another hangover game, as not many teams party harder than the Cubs. They clinched the night before. They sat everybody, and the Cardinals still needed the game, and they bet the Cubs, and the Cubs won 2-1 in 11 innings, and the Cardinals have been eliminated from the playoffs as a result.
Yeah, all the money came on Chicago, and the Cubs were hungover all game. So were the Cards, it appeared. Did you see the catch that Martin made to close the game? That might have been one of the best game-ending plays in MLB history, robbing Paul DeJong of a home run that would have tied it. Look, we got the picture right here. You can check it out. Impressive catch to save the game for the Chicago Cubs last night.
All right, NFL quickly, pros versus Joes. The pros are on the Saints in London. The Joes are as well. But Rams taking money. That's under a touchdown in Dallas. Giants taking money. I can't believe they're betting the Chargers, but they're now the favorite at home against the Eagles. No home field advantage at all. And the Broncos taking money at home to Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, the pros, last week, the pros had strong opinions. The Joes had strong opinions. Pros went 4-1. Joes went 2-8. This week, the pros have strong opinions. The Joes' opinions aren't as strong this week. They're not a one of them as strong. Last week, they thought they had it all figured out. Obviously, they got crushed. This week, the Joes not quite as confident. But the pros, money's poured in on the Saints. Absolutely, they hate the travel spot for Miami. We're going to talk about this game in Big Game Breakdown in just a few minutes. The Rams, given the situational aspect of this, remember, Rams played on Thursday, long week, extra time to prepare. Cowboys played on Monday, short week, not much time to prepare. No surprise the Rams have taken money in that one. Giants are betting against the Bucs injury report. We've talked about that on the show throughout the course of the week. Tampa with a very ugly defensive injury report. The Chargers, why are they betting the Chargers? It's a spot play. LA's 0-2 at home, the third game of a 3-game homestand. They don't like the Phillies, the Eagles coming off the big divisional win, traveling west. A purely spot on the Chargers, but wise guys are all over it. And Denver, coming off a bad second half at Buffalo, has attracted a lot of attention going against the Oakland Raiders, who were complete no-shows last Sunday night at Washington.
Show me game for the Jags, laying 3 against the Jets. The Joes are on the Jags, the Saints, the Bengals, the Patriots, and the Colts. Be careful when the public's on an underdog. It rarely wins.
Yeah, sure. And when you talk about the Joes in this instance, a lot of it's who they're going to bet against. They like the Jaguars? No, they want to bet against the Jets. They like the Bengals? No, they want to bet against the Browns. They like the Colts? Not necessarily. The Joes want to bet against the Seattle Seahawks at home, which is something we haven't seen a lot in recent years. And, of course, the Patriots, the team that the bettors want to get involved with, and it looks like they want to fade the Miami Dolphins right now because, of course, the Dolphins lost to the team that the Joes love to bet against, the Jets, last week. Oh, Miami must stink. But worth noting, pros and Joes both on the New Orleans Saints, there's going to be a lot of liability for the sportsbooks in that particular ball game.
All right, how about some Trump props? If you want action, you can get action on anything you want. Patty Power does an unbelievable job with these Trump props. There's like 500 of them. Will Biden meet him in an event and punch him in the face? Yes, it's 100-1. Will he commission and put his face added to Mount Rushmore? All kinds of stuff like that. Will they name a Russian airport after him? It's fantastic. Impeachment odds. Will he last a full term? It's great. Bookmaker put up some props as well about tweeting and NFL. And will Trump tweet NFL before 1 o'clock Eastern on Sunday, October 1st? How many NFL tweets? Over under 8.5. Time frame begins Thursday, the 28th, through Sunday with the games. I mean, you got everything here with some of these props that they put up. Who's the next team to go to the White House or skip the White House? This McCoy. Will McCoy take a knee during the anthem for Week 4? Yes, minus $2. No other activity. He was doing calisthenics for the last time they played the anthem in a Week 3 game.
What's the rule on Sportsbet? We're not allowed to talk politics unless we're talking betting on politics. And the fact is, we're seeing more and more of these, political props, shall we call them. Limits are low, juice is high, but they're certainly intriguing to talk about. And when you have opinions about some of this stuff, it gives you an opportunity to bet on it. Now, the ones that we put up here on the graphic, these actually expired. The time frame began last night at 5 o'clock Eastern. But How many times are you going to tweet NFL? How many times are you going to tweet stand for our anthem? Is he going to tweet an individual player's name? Interesting stuff to consider. If politics makes you crazy, hey, maybe it'll make you less crazy. You're making a couple of bucks betting some of these props. Interesting to discuss, Pauly, no question about it.
There's some great stuff up there on some of them. Facet, sex tape, all that stuff. It's great. Up next, big game breakdown. We'll start with the London game again. Saints and Dolphins on Sportsbook. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Hey, back on Sportsbook, Betting Insight today. We roll on with Big Game Breakdown. Always sponsored and powered by Bet Online. Check out the bonus page at sportsbookreview.com for the latest and best offers to open a new account today. Sunday morning, 6:30 a.m. Pacific, the London game. Saints and Dolphins. Saints are 50.5 the total. Some movement on the over, which surprises me. New Orleans went straight to London after winning at Carolina. Miami traveling later in the week. And this is tough because the Dolphins, because of Irma, went out to L.A., played the Chargers, back to New York to play the Jets, and now out to London. Not a great spot. And Gase not happy with the offense, which he called garbage.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a situational standpoint, which team is prepped and ready for this ballgame? Advantage New Orleans. That's a big part of the reason why we've seen so much money coming on the Saints this week. Saints straight to London. They won at Carolina, made the trip across the pond to the UK, and then got in their normal routine. The team had Tuesday off, back to full prep routine on Wednesday. Miami, well, some of the players flew home because they haven't been home. This is the fifth straight game. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but later in the week for Miami, so not necessarily on their regular routine. They're not on their regular routine. Saints defensive lineman Cam Jordan talking about the effects of being in London early. Quote, "If I see beans in my breakfast again, it's not for me. You guys can keep that part. But other than that, it's been phenomenal." And again, this is a quote from Wednesday. Again, we wake up this morning and are completely focused on Miami, and our tourism part is over. Now, Drew Brees, he lost Brandon Cooks in the offseason. He lost Willie Snead the first couple of games, but hasn't mattered so far. He's got a 109.7 passer rating. That's the second best of his career through the first couple of games. 6 touchdown passes, 0 INTs. And by the way, Willie Snead comes back in the lineup this week. We'll have to see how much he gets involved in the game plan. Drew Brees, quote, "I think that's a process. That's a transition. He's been out for a little bit now. He's obviously a great element to what our offense can do. So I'm sure there will be a package of stuff. We'll be trying to build on how we've gone the last few weeks, but obviously he can be a big part of that." Snead, not necessarily a guy to be targeting in fantasy drafts necessarily, but certainly gives that New Orleans offense one more deep play dimension against the Dolphins defense that's shown vulnerability in that regard.
Yes, they have. Now, the offense was a joke. No points and 149 total yards before the final drive against the Jets. Here's the money quote from Gase. "The last game was a disaster. It wasn't very good. We're all taking part of the blame. We all have to be better. Really, when we get into too many mental errors or it's not executed the way we think it should be, and we're just not in a good rhythm, whether it be bad play calls or we screwed something up, it's trying to get some consistency overall, the big picture of everything, and we haven't had that." There's the quote. They were better off with Matt Moore as opposed to Cutler. Here's a good test. Maybe the Saints defense is better than what we thought because they were lit up by Bradford and that explosive Vikings offense all of a sudden and Tom Brady, and they shut down Carolina last week. So we'll see how they do against this Charlie check-down offense of Miami. Ajayi is supposed to play as well. Also something to watch the Saints with Armstead and Strafe as well, that they didn't practice in the middle of the week. See if they're able to go on Sunday as well. All those things we got to watch, and we'll see how the Saints defense does. I'm surprised at the over money coming in.
Sure. Well, there are issues with the Saints defense right now. It looks like their number one pick, Marshawn Lattimore, is going to be able to play this week. He had a concussion, but the early indications are Lattimore will likely be able to suit up. Even with him, they still have cluster injuries in the secondary. But one of the surprises about the over, well, the Saints played without both their starting offensive tackles last week, and they're not necessarily a team. I don't know that either guy is going to play this week either. But the prevailing narrative in this ballgame is all about the travel spot for Miami. This is a team that's been on the road since August 24th in the preseason. They have not played at home. traveling to London a long, long way for the Miami Dolphins. The markets have reacted accordingly. We'll get back to this game when it comes to play of the day time.
Game number 2, bet online. Steelers are 3 on the road against Baltimore, 42 the total. 8 of the last 11 regular season games have been decided by 4 points or less. The Steelers' offense is broken. Can they fix it? He's only thrown to Antonio Brown. He had Bryant wide open in the Bears game to start. He dropped it for a touchdown. Ben struggled. They can't get Bell going. I mean, look what's happened here. They struggle to beat Cleveland 21-18. They lose to Chicago in overtime, and they catch the break where Bradford doesn't play, but Keenum doesn't find out till Sunday morning, so he didn't have any time to work with the first team, and that was the win against home against the Vikings. Steelers have not played well.
No, I mean, you can make an argument that the Steelers' offense is the single biggest underachiever in the NFL so far this season. So we got to ask ourselves, what's going on? Is Big Ben slumping? Is Big Ben finally gotten old? I don't know. Look at the numbers. They're pretty dramatic. 2015, this explosive offense, 8.4 yards per pass. Last year, strong team, 7.5 yards per pass. So far this season, down to 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Big Ben after the Chicago loss, quote, I feel like we lost the game because of me, because I didn't play well enough. It's not on anyone else. That's how I felt. That's what you have to do. You have to own it, and I will own it because if I play better in that game, then I feel we win that game. And you can go even further. Look at what's wrong with the Steelers' offense. Gee, the passing game's not working. Guess what? The running game's not working either. Le'Veon Bell, yards per rush. Last year, 4.9 yards per carry. The year before, 4.9 yards per carry. So far this season, 3.5 yards per carry. Steelers are focused. Baltimore's got their full attention. We haven't seen Pittsburgh's A game yet. This might be the chance for them to bring it out.
Oh, Ben is struggling, and then you have Flacco. My God, if you think Ben's been bad, look at Flacco's numbers. How about this graphic? 2014, his yards per pass and his passer rating. And you see how it's gone down. Look at this year, 5.3 yards per pass, and his passer rating 65. And all the injuries on offense, we told you last week how much they would miss Yanda. The kid had 28 yards passing and 2 interceptions. They were horrible. That game was over in the first quarter. Here's Flacco. We played terrible last week, but the first 2 weeks we were standing up here saying how it wasn't the best statistical performance, but it's what we need to do to win a football game. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves when we all of a sudden start saying we haven't played well for 3 weeks. The other 2 weeks, we did what we had to do to win football games. I don't think that's anything we should hang our heads on. Well, the problem is the defense had 10 takeaways in the first 2 games. You didn't do a damn thing on offense except the fluke touchdown to Macklin against Cincinnati. So it's definitely cause for concern how bad their offense has been. Horrible.
It's an interesting debate that Flacco brings to the table here, because he's saying, look, we didn't need to do anything the first 2 games. The defense created 10 turnovers. We got the ball in good field position. It wasn't about putting together long drives. So don't say the offense is completely broken just because of last week's debacle. We did what we needed to do the first couple of weeks. I understand his assessment. I don't know that I agree with it. The offense did not look right the first couple of weeks. You talk about Yanda getting hurt, and now we're talking about a team with legitimate offensive line woes. That's a problem for Baltimore. They're getting a Steelers team that is fully focused. That's a problem for Baltimore. The issue, though, number one, this series history, man, it's tight. It's hard to lay points on the road with Pittsburgh, especially now the lines move so high towards the Steelers and weren't laying a field goal earlier in the week. But the bigger issue, Baltimore off a whipping like the one they took in London against the Jaguars. I don't like anything about this Ravens team, but I do like their character. And off a loss like that, it's hard for me to get to the window laying points against Baltimore at home, even versus a team with a potent offense when that potent offense is currently broken.
That was a bad total they sent out. That was 45. There's now 41 and a halves out there. That was way too high. Up next, big game breakdown. We continue with the Raiders and Broncos in the Sunday night game. Do we have to? All right, we'll get to the Colts and the Seahawks in the play of the day on Sportsbook. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up on Sportsbook, Pauly and Teddy. Big game breakdown rolls on. Late game, terrific. Raiders and the Broncos. Denver's up to 3, 46 the total. I don't know what the hell happened Sunday night. That's a head scratcher. The Raiders blown out by the Redskins 27-10. They couldn't do anything on offense. The Broncos offense struggled too. Simeon had a couple horrible interceptions in the second half. But to the Raiders, Carr only had 96 net passing yards and 35 dropbacks, 4 sacks, pair of interceptions. Now you go against one of the best defenses in the NFL. They didn't try to run the ball with Lynch. Cooper had a ton of drops. It was very, when they played last year, the Raiders dominated that matchup in Oakland. You can throw out what happened in Week 17 because Carr didn't play, but that was bizarre how the Raiders couldn't do anything, a total no-show in primetime.
Well, one of the things that you want to, when you go back and kind of go through last week's results and try to assess them properly, I think there were a number of teams that were distracted by the national anthem controversy. Certainly you look at Pittsburgh's flat performance, and the issues that happened there. Oakland was the flattest effort of all. I mean, it really was. After the fact, we can point the finger, national anthem. It may or may not have been the case, but the bottom line is the Raiders were complete no-shows last Sunday night. Say what you want about what the Redskins brought to the table. Oakland brought absolutely nothing. We haven't seen that from the Raiders very often. Now, obviously, Derek Carr was miserable. The elite offensive line was miserable. Amari Cooper, we got to talk about him. This is the guy who led the NFL in drops as a rookie. He had 18. Last year, he had only 4 drops. Already this season, out of only 16 catchable passes thrown his way, his 2017 drop rate, again, the highest in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, based on their stats. Jack Del Rio, quote, talking about Amari Cooper, if I felt like I could talk my way through it, I'd be yapping all over the place. It's not something I can talk my way through. He's just going to have to make the catch, do the work. I believe in him. I believe that he will. Amari Cooper's quote, obviously, I like to look back on them and see how I dropped the ball and try to fix it. Most of the balls I've dropped have been the result of trying to run before I catch the ball. It can be a little frustrating, but you just have to go and fix it. I don't know if this is a long-term problem for Amari Cooper, but I would certainly expect the Oakland Raiders offense to come up with a little bit of a better showing this week, although the competition they're facing in Denver is no joke, Paulie. There's a reason the wise guys have been pounding the Broncos all week.
Yep, Simeon's a good quarterback. The media has this wrong. It's a lot like the situation last year in Minnesota. Bradford's good as well. But if you can't run the ball because guys are hurting the offensive line so bad you don't have time to throw, you're not going to have success. Some people thought he had a concussion in the Buffalo game. He had 2 horrible interceptions in the second half. That was a reason why they lost. Vance Joseph on the turnovers, we can't do it. Simeon understands that. Moving forward, he'll play better from this, and Simeon has been better at home. Simeon, but again, I'm responsible for every ball that goes in the air. Can't do that back there. Can't turn it over anywhere when we're backed up. You can't do that. Now back to the offensive line. They have to do a better job, and the offense, period. First 3 quarters, they've outscored their opponent 75-37. That's the best in the NFL. Fourth quarter, they've been outscored 27-7. I agree with the move. Some Denver money. Any thoughts on the total?
Well, I mean, look, if you're betting the Broncos, you're not betting this game to go over the total. The whole concept of Denver's going to play a ball control offense. And I'm with you. Simeon's played 10 good quarters of football this year and 2 bad quarters of football. The 2 bad quarters of football came against the Bills in the second half last week. Returning home, one would expect him to correct that. But Denver wasn't a complete no-show last week. Oakland was.
Yep.
And I know this is going to be a tough test for Carr and company. I can understand why the wise guy money has come in on the Broncos. At the current number, I'm not all that interested in laying a field goal with Denver.
All right, one more. Sunday Night Football. Why is this on national television? Jesus. The Colts and the Seahawks. Seattle 13, 41.5. Wilson again carrying much of the load. The offensive line's terrible. 729 passing yards, 100 rushing yards. And Seattle total yards, 970. Conundrum for Carroll. Offense at its best when it plays fast. Go up-tempo. Make up for the weaknesses in the offensive line, but playing fast, you can wear out the defense, the wear and tear. They've allowed 24 points and 165 rushing yards in the second half alone against Tennessee. That was easy. Tennessee ran all over them in that game.
Yeah, I don't understand why you don't like this game. They're scheduling it before they know that Andrew Luck's not going to play. It's Colts Seahawks. These are 2 teams that have been playoff teams just about every season for the last half decade. You can understand why it's on Sunday Night Football, even though Indy has the problem at QB right now. But throw that graphic up one more time. We got Russell Wilson, of the 970 total yards that the Seahawks have this season, Russell Wilson is responsible for 829 of those. It's been nothing but Russell Wilson so far. And of course, it's a real conundrum for the Seahawks because they want to play fast. All right. They have to use tempo to make up for the weaknesses on the offensive line. But that defense got completely worn down last week. You know, they gave up 24 points, 165 rushing yards in the second half alone against the Titans. So far this season, Seattle, only 55 of their 199 plays have been running back runs. Pete Carroll, quote, "The running back needs more carries, and our guys are still young and figuring it out and all that. There weren't enough carries to share. So Thomas Rawls and Eddie Lacy didn't get a shot to go much. But it wasn't by their doing. We just didn't get enough plays." There's a problem with that statement. Seattle had 72 offensive snaps last week. That's the third highest snap count in the league, Pauly. So for Carroll to say, oh, we didn't have enough snaps, it's just not the truth. They did have enough snaps. It is worth noting. You talk about laying points with Seattle. Seahawks 0-3 against the spread so far this season, despite the fact they've had the last score in all 3 games. When you're 0-3 ATS and you've scored last all 3 times, that's a red flag. 3-11 against the spread. 3-8 against the spread. Their last 11 overall. Although it's worth noting, all 3 covers came in the home favorites role, which is exactly what they're in on Sunday night.
A mixed bag for Brissett so far in his first start. They only scored 13 points, and they had 10 in the first quarter. Last time out, he played well against Cleveland, but it was Cleveland. 17 of 24, 259 yards, ran for 2 touchdowns. But now you go from Cleveland at home to late night prime time at Seattle. They develop a rapport with Hilton. That's pretty good. But also, it appears Frank Gore's age is catching up with him as well. But let's be honest, this goes back to Ryan Grigson. This is a horrible Indianapolis roster. It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And they played, they brought their A game last week. They played very well against Cleveland at home. But beating Cleveland at home by a field goal, mind you, that the Browns came back and made that game interesting late. Beating Cleveland at home and then facing Seattle at night on the road, a very, very different story. You talked about T.Y. Hilton. I mean, Hilton was phenomenal last week. 7 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. But nobody else caught more than 2 passes for Indy. I don't know that Brissett has a full comfort level with most of the guys in this offense yet. And you're right. Frank Gore, 3 yards per carry on his first 49 attempts. The offensive line not getting the job done for Indy's running game thus far. Chuck Pagano talking about the challenge of playing in Seattle. Quote, "When it gets rocking and that stadium shakes, you can't hear yourself think. Seahawks certainly have a history of giving young quarterbacks without a whole lot of experience like Jacoby Brissett lots of problems in this venue. My initial lean was towards Indy. The more I looked at the game, the less I wanted to get the betting window with the Colts. The clear pass for me."
All right. We love these early games. Back to London, money time, play of the day. Wake up, have some breakfast, and watch the game. This one's on TV, unlike last week with the stream on Yahoo Sports. Back to the Saints and the Dolphins. What are we doing?
Game number 251. Let's take the New Orleans Saints -3. The Dolphins sure have the look of a bet against team right now. Remember, they lost their bye week when they with the hurricane in week 1, so they're not going to get any breaks from here on out. I think there's money to be made betting against Miami. We'll take a little New Orleans on the come. Let's wake up and win on Sunday morning. New Orleans Saints -3. Game number 251. That's our play of the day.
Very good. Another fun week. We're back Monday to recap everything, college football and the NFL on Sportsbook. Betting Insight today on SBRpicks.com. Thanks for watching.